Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? I am so happy that I get to see you guys because I've been very, very busy. And so today is going to be a great conversation. I'm going to give people time to jump on. I see a little exclamation mark. Maybe this is not streaming in um, going live. I would love it to go live in Facebook. I don't know why it's saying it's not live in Facebook. And that's one of the main things. So let me just do the little tech god checks. You know how that is. I use my phone as a backup. So let's look and see what's going on here. And then we'll get started. Let's see if we are. No, we're not live, and that is not a good thing. So let's see here. How do we looks like the broadcast was deleted on Facebook? Try to recreate a new broadcast or just remove this destination from the broadcast and then re-add. Let's do that. Let's remove, and then we're going to re-add this broadcast and see what happens there. I tell you, it always happens. The tech gods don't like me, which gives us time. Now you should be able to see us in Facebook. You should be able to see us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. We find people where they are is the name of the game. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Sabrina Walker Hernandez. Welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina. In just a second, we're going to be sharing the tea on clear messaging and marketing plans for small nonprofits. This is very good because small nonprofits is where it is. We know that most of us are small. But if you've never heard of me before, again, my name is Sabrina. I am the CEO and president of Supporting World Hope. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I help nonprofits and small businesses build relationships that increases revenue. And today we're going to have with us, I'm going to bring her to the screen really quick here. We're going to have with us Jordana Merkins from Voice for Good, mission-driven marketing. So this conversation is going to be critical for you if you're a small nonprofit who needs a clear messaging and a marketing plan. And that's why we have Jordana with us. But before we get started, let's make sure again that we are streaming live in the Facebook group. It says that we are streaming live in the Facebook group. I don't see us. I'm going to assume that it is there. I hope it's there. I see us now, so I feel good about that. Give me a like across all the platforms if you can hear me loud and clear. Let me know where you're watching from, even if you're watching in rebroadcast, because this is going to help us with the algorithms. And I'm seeing that people are showing up. I always like to acknowledge when people show up. So if you make a comment or anything like that, I like to call out names. I can't see it otherwise. So if you want me to shout you out, because you have, I got Nathaniel Mata here. I got Richard Riemann here. So thank you. Richard's from Denver, by the way. So thank you. So I'm going to bring Jordana up on the screen, right? Because she is the expert that we have here today. So I'm going to add her to the stream. Yay, it worked. I got Zulina here. Yes, Nathaniel. I sent Nathaniel now. Nathaniel is a local from where I live at. So very happy to have him here. So tell us a little bit about yourself, ma'am, and your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sabrina, for having me. Great to be here. I have worked in nonprofit marketing communications my entire career. I started right out of college. In college, I was an English major and minored in creative writing and sociology, and kind of had all these varied interests, and decided to combine them to really work on it how people think en masse and how to make mass communication personal. And so I started in I did a few advertising internships and, for-profit marketing. And I realized I really did enjoy that, but that I needed to be marketing a mission. So straight out of college, I started, my first job was at the National Down Syndrome Society.
Mm,
And I worked in-house at a few other nonprofits after that. I was in-house at organizations large and small for about a decade. And then the past 3 years, I've been consulting primarily with small organizations on their messaging, just getting really clear on how to tell their stories to connect with the right people for their cause.
good. This is great. So, because I know, I always call it like the trifecta. You got to have marketing, right? You got to have the right board and then the fundraising. So, if you get those three things together, board is the foundation, marketing and fundraising, it all works out for your organization. So that's why I'm so excited to have you here. So without further ado, because I always say about 45 minutes, right? I want to be respectful of your time. I have some questions here. So one of my first questions is going to be, what are some of the biggest challenges, right, that small nonprofits face when creating marketing plans?
Yeah. So this I hear often. It's generally time, right? Lack of
Mhm.
time, lack of resources, lack of expertise, right? Especially at smaller shops. We're all wearing all of the hats all of the time. Marketing or communications may or may not be in your title, but you're doing it anyway. And yeah, it's just really coming to it from a place that generally tends to get reactive, right? It's,
Yes.
oh, we haven't posted in a while. We got to put something up. Or, oh, something's happening tomorrow. We have to react to that, right? And, post and send an email, something like that. So, what I really try to stress is that, even with limited time and resources and expertise, learning the right ways to communicate, to really be clear on what your message is, will help you connect with your people, and to do it in a proactive way so that it's saving you time. It's that time investment, at the start, so that it ultimately saves you time in the long run when you're not staring at a blank page and you're not wondering what to post tomorrow or what should go in your next newsletter or, anything like that. So, the heart of it is really that like clear message, that supports all of your marketing efforts, because then you're never wondering what comes next.
Okay. So how can a small nonprofit that has limited resources and a lack of expertise, how can they overcome these things when they are developing their marketing strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always remind people that marketing is not something that I like your trifecta,
Mhm.
that visual, because it's marketing is not something that's like off on the side, like it's an afterthought. And often it becomes that when there's,
Yeah.
everyone so strapped for time. Um, and that a strong marketing plan really supports all organizational goals. So, again, whether or not marketing is in your title, or if you even have
Mhm.
someone who's, in that role, really thinking about it in terms of, okay, so what are we trying to accomplish as an organization this year, this quarter, whatever it is, start small, and think about how marketing can help you get there, right? And, what are your fundraising goals and how does marketing align with that? What are your programmatic goals and how does marketing help you get there? Because then again, you're thinking strategically about what to post, about what to send, and not just, oh, well, we haven't posted in a while, so something should go up. It helps you get a little bit clearer on what those goals are and how you can create a plan.
Mhm.
And a plan doesn't have to be, when I first got into this, it was sort of like, well, what actually is in a marketing plan and what does that look like? And that sounds so intimidating. And it really doesn't even need to be. Often plans are in a Google Doc because they
Yeah.
change time. So, it doesn't need to be set in stone. And, you're putting out there what your goals are and then how to advance, on each of them.
So I know you're kind of going into some of the common mistakes, but this is one of the things that when I first got into nonprofit and people said marketing plan, I did the exact same thing. I was like, well, what does the plan look like? Is it this document? Do I have to, like, it becomes like this monster
Mhm.
in your mind. And you're like, I don't have time for that. And so you kind of avoid it. So, what are some of the other common mistakes that small nonprofits make when it comes to marketing, and how can they avoid those?
Yeah, definitely. I think just just starting somewhere, right? Because it gets intimidating, and then you don't do it at all, right? So,
Right.
I've been there. It's
Mm-hmm.
but then it works against you because again, you get into that reactive place, and then you're not in control. You're not in control of your time. You're not in control of your message. And then taking a step back, even before you put anything in a marketing plan, really being clear on what your message is. So yes, that's your mission, but it's also really, I call it a big picture story. What is the story that you are telling in every one of your communications to your people? Because that's also how you're going to attract the right people and how you're going to keep them aligned with your mission and connected to your organization. So really, what is that story that you're telling? What is the impact of your mission, right? Why does it matter that you're doing what you do? And then also, how are you different than the other organizations that are maybe doing something similar to what you do? Because there are a lot of organizations out there, so there will be others that are similar to you. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you craft that, that clear story? Because then once you've done that, then your marketing has something at its center, right? Because if you're marketing this program or that event, or you're marketing around a campaign, or whatever it is, if there isn't that core message that you're reflecting back through all of your communications, then it's going to fall flat, and then people won't remember you, right? Like, we all have so much thrown at us every day. So really getting clear on who you are, what you're about, leading with your values, that's how you're going to be clear on that. And then once you have that in place, then you can think about, what's going in that plan. What are the tactics that you're going to use to support what you're doing as an organization? And it will feel much more connected to your people.
Okay, so I have a question that is not there, but I think you have this one. So where does the clear messaging and the marketing plan intersect with the case for support or case statement? Is it all together, or do you
Yeah,
see a
it's a good question.
distinction?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the messaging, when I work with an organization, I generally start with a messaging guide. So it's a deep dive into mission, vision, values. It's really, again, it's what you're drawing from, so that, that the blank piece of paper is really intimidating, right? So
Mhm.
once you have that messaging guide in place, then you don't have a blank piece of paper anymore. There's always something to base your communications on. And so everything comes from that guide, right? So that's your case statement comes from there.
Okay.
Your case, when you build out a more detailed case for support, like that's coming from there. When you're thinking about what to thread through your annual report, that's also coming from there. And it's an internal document, so it's not something that you're going to share as the guide itself, but really that's where everything stems from. And when whether you're a team of 3 or 30 or 300, once you have that internal alignment on, this is what we're about, and this is our story, and this is how we're going to communicate that to people, then your message just becomes more naturally amplified, right? I like to think about a visual of, if you have 3 people with 3 different speech bubbles, then each one's kind of small. But if you have 3 people with 1 speech bubble, then it's naturally much bigger. And that's how your people become your ambassadors also,
Mhm.
because when someone out in the world says, what do you do? Then they can speak clearly, not just about their particular role at your organization, but your organization as a whole.
That's a great visual. I got it as soon as you said the bubbles and then putting it all together. It's amplifying the voice
Mhm.
of the organization and making sure that there is consistency across the message. And so what are some other ways that small nonprofits can ensure that their marketing messages are consistent and effectively reach their target audience?
Yeah. So I think that the ends of that sentence, like, effectively reach the target audience,
Mhm.
thinking about who that audience is, right? Because it's hard to think about in these terms because we're all so passionate about our missions, but your mission isn't for everyone, right? There are so
Thank
many
you.
causes out there, right? And especially in nonprofit, especially in small nonprofit, we're so passionate about what we do that often it's, well, everyone should care about this, right? And maybe, but they're not going to. So we need to think about it in those terms. So, like, don't waste your time. If you run a dog rescue, don't waste your time on cat people, like, think about who the dog people are and how you're going to reach them. So in doing that, you want to think about your values, as an organization and how that's going to align with your supporters, and make that clear in your messaging. What matters to your organization? What are the things that you care about? And then thread that through your messaging. And also think about the value that you provide to your people, right? Think about it not just in terms of the things that you want to share, but what are they actually going to care to read about? What's going to stop their scroll in their feed, right? Again, we all have so much being thrown at us. So when you think about your people, think about what they care about, and then align your content accordingly.
Yeah, that makes sense, because a lot of people think, oh, if you raise money for kids and animals or cats and dogs, it's easy. And I'm going, no, some people don't like cats, some people don't like dogs, some people don't like children. And
Right.
so you have to really hone in on your target audience. And that makes sense, because I've talked to people and they're like, who's your target audience? They're like, well, everybody. And I'm going, big
Nope.
mistake. It
Yeah.
can't be
Yeah.
everybody. So
Absolutely.
that is spot on. And if you're just joining us and you're just catching up with us, welcome to the broadcast. And we're currently talking about clear messaging and marketing plans for small nonprofits. And we've covered some great nuggets about about planning. Just taking the time. We know that there's a lack of time and lack of resources, but you do have to take the time to plan. And it's not this big monster in the room, right? You start with an internal document. It could be on a Google Doc, as Jordana said, and it's something that you go through. So thank you again for joining us. Again, if you can hear us, let us know that you're watching by clicking a like button. It's going to help us with the algorithms. Y'all know with social media, and we're all about the algorithms, right? So with that in mind, let's talk about some metrics. When it comes to marketing, what metrics should nonprofits use, right? Should small nonprofits use to measure the success of their marketing efforts? And how can they use the dirty D word, I call it the dirty D word, data, to improve future campaigns?
Yeah,
I hated hearing that word, data.
I'm with,
Like,
I'm with you. And if marketing plans are intimidating, I think metrics are even more intimidating. So
yes.
I hear that completely. And again, I would say to that, just start small, right? You don't need to be tracking everything all the time. And also don't worry about, industry benchmarks as
Okay.
much, or, what matters in the sector as a whole, right? Because especially for smaller nonprofits, so much of that is not going to apply. So I would say look inward, right? And again, think about your organizational goals, and then what tactics you're taking to reach them, and then how to track those tactics. So, for example, if you're starting a monthly giving program, then maybe, the dollar amount raised is less important than the number of monthly givers month over month, or quarter over quarter, or however you're tracking. But again, I would just say, so consider your particular goals, start somewhere, and then track against yourself. Because I wouldn't, once you start comparing yourself to other organizations, or, it's not that isn't important, but especially when you're, time and resource strapped, I don't think that's what matters most. I think what matters most is where you were a month ago, or a quarter ago, or a year ago, or whatever it is, and where you're headed. So, and again, it doesn't need to be, you don't need all kinds of dashboards, right? Like a Google spreadsheet is a great place to start, right? So just think about, again, what your goals are, what are meaningful metrics to you to track them. And then just start marking them down, and, once a month, or even once a quarter, if that's what's doable for you. Again, the consistency here is more important, than doing it all the time. So you don't need to be tracking daily. You don't need to be tracking weekly. Think about what's realistic for you, and then do it consistently. And then, yeah, again, it can be a pretty basic spreadsheet, but then you will note your growth, or not, right? And then you'll know what to fix and what to focus on.
You said something that's very key, and I don't want to glaze over it, because you said it doesn't have to be the money that you measure all the time. And I don't think people hear that enough, because it can be the number of donors, and it can even be the number of donors that you retain, because we do a horrible job at keeping our donors.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if we retain those donors, then the money will come because it will grow over time. And so
Mhm.
just measure. It doesn't have to always be about the money, guys. I wanted that to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for highlighting
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's really marketing communications at its core is about the relationships, right? It's similar to fundraising.
Yes.
So even though we're thinking about it in terms of, email lists and social media and things that often seem anonymous and faceless and, and mass, we do want to think about it in terms of the relationships. So yeah, retention is a great one to be tracking, especially because smaller donors are the hardest ones to retain.
Yes.
So at smaller organizations, that's something that you definitely want to be thinking about. It's really worth investing in that. The stats, if we're talking about metrics, the stats around returning donors after one gift and after two gifts, like over 80% of first time donors won't return rather. But that jumps up to it's like 60%, are retained after a second gift or a subsequent
Mhm.
gift. So it's definitely in your best interest to invest in those relationships, and think about the ways that you're really engaging your people in the right way. And at the same time, again, it all goes back to clear messaging, right? So when
Mhm.
you're clear on who you are and what you're about, then if they've made one gift, then they will stick around if you can continue to be sharing that consistent message. And at the same time, you'll also attract new people, right? So it
Yes.
really serves both purposes, but definitely retention is something that you want to focus on.
Perfect. Perfect. Are there any other marketing trends or that small nonprofits should be aware of or stay up to date about, or any technologies um, without breaking the bank? What do you think they should be aware of?
Yeah. So first, I would say, like, don't get bogged down in trends at all,
Okay.
right? So it's important to stay current. And there are definitely, resources out there, free resources like, Sabrina, all the wonderful people you have on here,
Hmm.
and, other summits that are out there. And they're all important.
Hmm.
But I think also when you're strapped for time and resources, just not getting bogged down in what, especially around social media, there are so many trends that it's just,
Yes.
it's hard to keep up. But again, really the core of it is the relationships.
Yeah.
So engaging your people in a way that is genuine, a way that demonstrates who you are, what your values are, how you're going to connect with them in the long run. That I would just want to put out there is more important than any trend. But what I'm seeing more and more of, if we're going to talk trends, what I'm seeing more and more
Hmm.
of, and I'm sure everyone is as well, is, AI and how to use
Hmm.
that for your organization. So that's like, a whole other topic for another day. But I would say as a writer, and talk about intimidating. I will admit that I have been very intimidated to try some of the chat GPT and other
Oh,
things.
I love it, girl.
I do, and I've gotten used to it, but that to me was like, oh my goodness, what's coming next? But I will say that like that to me is very helpful. But again, it's only as helpful as the messaging you feed it, right? So once
Hmm.
you have your messaging in place, then you can start using it to help you, I would say, write a first draft. You don't want it to replace your writing completely, but
Hmm.
definitely something you can use to put your posts together, to have a draft of your newsletter or whatever it is, and it's definitely a time saver. So I would say if you're not already doing that, then go for it. But again, keeping in mind that it needs to sound like you. That's another
Yes.
piece of messaging, is your voice, your tone, your style. um, Sounding human, right? People give to people, people connect with people, so you need to sound like a human
Yes.
as an organization, even when it's an organization, right? In the sense that as an organization, we need to sound buttoned up and professional and all that. And I'm here to tell you that you can sound professional and sound like a human.
Right.
So keep that
Right.
in mind too.
That's a good one. I think that thank you for acknowledging that chat can help in a way, but yeah.
While, but I will admit it.
No problem. So what are some effective ways for small nonprofits to build and engage with their audience through social media? Because you mentioned social media and other digital channels.
Yeah. So social media has changed a lot, right? And if we're talking about trends, like these are things to be aware of. Again, not to get bogged down in like which reel do I need to be doing this week, but just to be aware that overall social media is it's not about broadcasting your message really anymore, right? Gone are the days where you could just put something up and hope, everyone's going to see it, right? Because as Sabrina said, the algorithms,
Yeah.
they're not all going to see it. And, even those that do, you need something that's going to stop their scroll. You need something that's going to interest them. So just remembering that social media is a two-way street, right? So it's not just about putting up what you want to say. Again, like you need to be creating that value to connect to your people. So you want to put out your message in a way that's going to, again, be of value to them, right? Don't think about you, think about them. What I always say when I'm thinking about communications is show me, you know me, right?
Mm.
Your audience is always going to be thinking that in one way or another. You always want to be showing them that you know them. So you're going to, and again, that's how you're going to retain your current people and attract new people, by showing them that you see them for who they are. And so you want to be focused on that in your messaging. And also when you're engaging with other accounts, right? It's important as your organization to engage with other accounts. It's important, for the algorithms, because they appreciate that you are not just putting out your own content. But certainly when people comment on your posts, you need to respond. If it's a negative comment, then you can just say, well, you can take it to the DMs, but you want to say something. You don't want to ignore it. So you want to make sure that you're interacting, both on your posts and then also on other posts. Like I've seen some great posts out there from different organizations interacting in each other's comments, and you'll get noticed by their followers too. Because you'll be active in their comments. And so they may choose to follow you as well. And B, it just again, it shows that you're using social media to be social, which we often forget about.
Yeah.
Because it's more about, well, my time is limited. I have to get up this post and I'm going to move on with my day. And again, we all know social media can be a huge time suck. So I'm not advocating for spending a ton of time on it. And it also doesn't need to be every day. Think about what's realistic for you and your schedule. But even if it's a couple of times a week or once a week or whatever it is, just going in and seeing what else is going on, either in your geographical area or in your cause area, other organizations that do similar things. Look at what hashtags are being used, and just start, putting yourself out there. Comment and like it and share it if appropriate. It gives you more content, right? So you don't always have to be thinking about what to post next. And it also gives you ideas for your own posts, because you'll see what people are interested in. So, and I think also with your own, so that's organization to organization, but also with your own people. Like if you have particularly active volunteers or donors that are active on social media, it's okay to wish them happy birthday, right? Again,
Right.
sound human. You don't always need to be, well, is that something that an organization would say? Be, again, consistent, have some policies around that, and what's appropriate for your organization. But I wouldn't be afraid to, again, sound human, be human, interact with other people and organizations on social media.
Yeah, that is so good. I even find myself you just gave me a moment, because sometimes I find myself like, it's about the schedule. Let's get it out. Let's get it out.
Yeah.
And I don't spend a lot of time interacting.
Yeah.
And that you just stepped on my toes.
Well,
So I have to do better
it's
with that.
common. We all do, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I get it. Yeah. In my own business also, I'm busy. I have this post, I scheduled it, done. But I always try to schedule a few minutes just for interacting with other people
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, because it is, like you said, it is social media, social, and
Forget.
and it
We're all
makes it.
guilty of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that. So, how can small nonprofits that you kind of gave me a aha moment, so I'm going to see if your mind went there too. So, how can small nonprofits collaborate, like you just said, with other organizations and community members to amplify their marketing efforts and increase their impact? Now, you gave us that maybe we should be, look, there's over 6,000 people in the Facebook group, and then over 3,000 on LinkedIn and YouTube. We should all be following each other, right? And commenting on each other's content and posts.
Absolutely. Adam, and I mean, that's a great place to start, right? It's
Okay.
just to see who else is out there who's relevant to you. And again, it, to me, it all comes down to clear messaging, right? So how are you even going to indicate who makes sense to collaborate with? So certainly there's your mission, and if you're aligned, sure. But again, that's your values, right? That's your voice, that's your tone, that's your style, and that's how you're going to be able to tell who is like-minded. Where are there going to be those synergies? Where is that going to be there, that alignment, so that it makes sense to collaborate? But yeah, starting just by liking each other's posts or commenting, and again, in a way that sounds true to who you are as an organization. So it's clear when you're putting it out there, you're not sounding like them, you're sounding like you.
Mhm.
So that, yeah, so that's a great place to start collaborations and to think about, how you're going to identify the right people to collaborate with in the first place.
Okay. Is there any other ideas or anything else that you've seen out there around collaboration that makes sense that you may have seen in the marketing realm?
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked that is because I think a lot of times, and I know it's not one of the questions, but I think a lot of times small nonprofits live in a silo.
Mhm.
And I think that there are things, I know living in a silo, we can get buried in what we do, but the small collective, if we can figure out a way to collectively collaborate around marketing, do you think it has to be like in the same, this is a side conversation, y'all, this is happening live, she ain't get prepped for this one, it's me thinking, my wheels are running. If What would be the benefit of small organizations that maybe have similar missions or deal with some of the same things to come together to
Hmm.
market? Would
Mhm.
you see that as a benefit, or how would you characterize that?
Mhm. I think it goes back to goals, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think it's, you have to think about, again, what your organizational goals are.
Hmm.
Um, and then like, align the marketing goals with that. So
Hmm.
if you think there's, like the collaboration would make sense with another organization, let's say in a similar geographical area, maybe you don't do exactly the same thing. And that's why it
Hmm.
makes sense to collaborate. Um, but you have to have similar goals, right?
Hmm.
Because then that's how it's going to best work together. And then I think the marketing needs to reflect that. Um, and then I think you're going to see, right, like in your emails, in your social media, like, you can sort of speak to, again, the shared goals and also audience, right? Because again, show me, you know me. If you're speaking to your audience and they have a completely different audience, or it's a different type of audience, right? If it's helpful if they have different people in their audience, because then you're
Hmm.
both going to grow. But thinking about the values that your audience has and how that aligns with your values, and perhaps another organization shares those values, and then you can all sort of grow together. Seth Godin says people like us do things like this,
Hmm.
which is important to think about with audience also, right? Who are the people like us who support organizations like yours? And so maybe collaboration begins there, right? Who are the people like us that support organizations like yours, and what other organizations, right? And so that's a good place to start as well. So again, I would always consider the audience. I think is, a place to start when you're thinking about what you're putting out there in the world, because again, it's not just about what you're putting out, it's about what they're hearing and who are the right people to hear it. So I would say around any collaboration, I think that's probably the most important thing to consider.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that. Thank you for going on that journey with me. My mind sometimes it starts to roll, and I go,
Oh,
okay,
good.
well, what about this? And what about this? So
Mhm.
right now, what I'm going to do is check and see if we have any questions, right? And I know that we're getting a lot of how. Oh, okay. So we do have some questions, but I think they might have been answered here. I'm gonna give people a few minutes to see. Um, oh, somebody put GPT question mark. Do you want to go into what that is just a little bit?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Yes, and thank you for the question and calling me out on insider language. It's not what you want to be doing. So yes, so ChatGPT is it's one type of AI, of artificial intelligence. It's sort of become the one that people use to refer to all of them, though there are hundreds and hundreds of different versions and platforms and ways to use artificial intelligence. ChatGPT in particular is about writing and words, which is where I spend a lot of my time thinking about. So you can put in a prompt that says, write me a social media post for my organization, basically, and it will write you a social media post for your organization. But the thing is that you need to be careful. Again, so that's why I said it's a good first draft, but it needs to really sound like you. So it's helpful to get started, but then, you want to work on it on your own from there. But also that's why I said, like, it all goes back to clear messaging, because you can say, write me a social media post, here's our big picture story, as I said, right? Here's how you answer. What do you do? Here's our impact. Here's, a bit about our organization. And then think about what exactly you wanted to say, right? So write us a social media post that talks about this story that we want to share. And, the more specific that you can be, write it in our voice and our tone. And, the more specific you can be, the better the outcome will be from ChatGPT or any one of these platforms. So again, that's, having a clearer sense of who you are and what you're about and what your clear message and your big picture story is, that will improve the output that you get from that. But again, I would just use it as a starting point.
That is a perfect answer. And I'm going to do an opportunity to plug my newsletter. In my newsletter, I always put a free resource, and chat about 6 months ago was included, because I like AI exactly for what you said, because we're small shop, small nonprofit. It saves so much time, but there's so many out there. There's Copy AI. There's Tome. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but Tome AI that helps with PowerPoint presentations. There's so many out there, but as was mentioned, you got to develop the clear message first, because if you don't, AI will dictate it to you, and it might not be speaking to your target audience.
Exactly.
So that's really what it's about, is making sure you have clear messaging to your target audience and taking the time to figure that out and doing the work. I want people to slow down and do the work, because a lot of times they go right into fundraising. Now that's okay. If you have some fundraising questions, I'm your girl. You can ask me all the fundraising questions that you have. You can visit my website at supportingworldhope.com. But we fail to slow down, to plan. And again, that trifecta: get your board right, get the marketing right, get the fundraising right, and you'll have a thriving nonprofit. And you cannot do marketing. And I've seen too many people try not to do the marketing, or they're inconsistent with the marketing, or they only post on social media when they have a fundraising event.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
that's
we
not
can't
bring the value to your audience.
Nope. They start to feel like an ATM machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to repel them. So let me check and see if there's any other questions around that. And what strategy? Okay, here we go. When building your supporting community, your audience, what strategies, platforms, social, emails, etc., have you seen work best for engagement and continued support? This is from Miss Diaz, Cruz Diaz. I'm gonna read it again so I can make sure you got it.
Okay.
When building your supporting community, your audience, what strategies, platforms, social, email, etc., have you seen work best for engagement and continued support?
Mm-hmm. So A couple things. This is an annoying answer, I know, but it depends. So I would say sort of similar to the metrics, it depends on you, on your organization. So I'm going to take a step back and say email for sure, right? The email, the stats are there that, email is tops in terms of fundraising for sure, but also just in terms of opens. Unlike social media, you own your lists. So if social media were to go away tomorrow, all of your followers would go away, but your emails are yours. So you would still be able to communicate with your people. So I would say focus on email. But in terms of that's what doesn't depend. Focus on email. But what does depend is the social media channels. So, you sort of want to think about the center of the Venn diagram in terms of where you are interested in spending your time and where your audience spends its time. You don't need to be everywhere. You should not be everywhere. I would say pick maybe 1 or 2 channels, maybe 3 if you really feel like you have the bandwidth, but really pick the places that you are going to enjoy spending your time. I know often social media for our organizations can feel like a chore. And, you want to spend somewhere, especially, thinking about social media being social, being able to reach out to other organizations. You want to pick channels that you understand. But then also where your audience is. And, the good thing is that there are lots of people in lots of places. So
Yes.
there is likely an audience for you on any platform you choose. But, thinking about your demographics, do you have to be on TikTok? Absolutely not. If you're trying to reach a younger audience and you feel like someone internally to your team has the capability and interest in TikTok, then yeah, maybe that's worth exploring. But I definitely don't think you need to be on all of the places just to be there. You want to, again, do what's realistic and, something that is going to be somewhere where you can show up consistently. And what I also just want to plug is repurposing content, because that's super important for many reasons. People, I don't know if anyone's heard of the rule of 7. The rule of 7 is that, people need to see something at least 7 times to take action. The rule of 7 is almost 100 years old. It was actually started by the film industry in the 1930s. So if we think about the world then and the world now, it's more like the rule of 700 now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We see things many, 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 many times. So repurposing really benefits your audience in addition to you, right? I've gotten pushback on repurposing and saying, oh, well, we don't want to be redundant. It looks lazy. It really does not. As we've said, the algorithms, right? Not everyone is seeing it in all the places, but even if they are, they need the reminders. So it really benefits your people. And of course it benefits you because then you're not reinventing the wheel every time, right? So if you're sending something out in an email, you can definitely repurpose it to social media. What I would just say is consider the platform, right? Like if it's on Instagram, people are going to be on their phone. You don't want to put an entire newsletter in one square. So, think about maybe you can translate it to a carousel and have it over a few different posts, but definitely there's no need to reinvent the wheel and come up with completely new content for every single post. So do yourself and your audience that favor of repurposing.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. Because I think people think they have to always create. And it's not. It's about repurposing. So thank you for saying that. And again, you don't have to be everywhere. So yeah. I needed your class early on because I was trying to do Clubhouse, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest. It can get overwhelming and all of it's not going to benefit you. So do what makes sense. Like you said, where your audience is. So that we are at 10:45, but I did want to check and make sure there's no other questions. I think we got it all covered there. And I wanted to also give you the final word before we close out. Is there any final word that you have for the audience? How can they find you? Where do you hang out on social media? Let us know.
Yeah, so my two platforms are LinkedIn and Instagram. So I'm Jordana Merkin on LinkedIn and Voice for Good on Instagram. I'm happy to connect in either or both of those places. I also have some freebies on my website if you want to start thinking about your messaging guide or marketing plan. There are some prompts there to get you started. It's voiceforgoodmarketing.com/freebies. And yeah, I'm happy to continue the conversation. You can reach out by email or on social media if you have any other questions. And thank you, Sabrina, for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you. So, guys, I leave you with this: your mission matters and deserves to be highlighted in your community. Your mission matters and can be an inspiration to those who need it the most. Your mission matters and deserves to be funded to its fullest capacity. And so, with that, we will see you on the next Sipping Tea with Sabrina on June the 28th. And our topic is going to be social media ads for nonprofits. And we're going to be having Dana Snyder on. So that's it for us. And we will see you the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye as soon as the tech gods allow me to say bye-bye.